Let's start thinking about symbolism. Symbolism helps you find meanings beyond what is obvious and can make reading literature really exciting. A symbol is an object that stands for itself and a greater idea. And while sometimes it feels scary to look for symbols in literature, we see symbols in life all the time. They might represent countries, they might represent religions, they might represent companies, they might represent teams, they might represent other kinds of teams. They can even give us directions about what to do. And all of those are just pictures that we look at and we immediately know what they represent. Take a second and see what you have in your schema around symbols already. Here's a bunch of images of things that could be symbols depending on context. Brainstorm how many symbolic meanings you can come up with just based on these pictures. The same object might have many different possible symbols, and there are a lot in here. See how many you can come up with. When we read in literature, symbols can have lots of different kinds of meanings. So some symbols have meanings that are personal. So this is a story about my grandma. When I was growing up, my grandma would sing me songs and play the organ that she had at her house, and she would send me cassette tapes, because she lived far away, of herself singing songs. And one of her favorite songs to sing us was Somewhere Over the Rainbow from Wizard of Oz, which was one of my favorite movies. So I really associate that symbol with my grandma. And a special story was after she had passed away. I was at college at UCLA, and the bells of our library would play at lunch a song every day. And the day after I came back from her funeral, I was sitting in the sun, feeling sad, thinking about my grandma, and the bells of Powell Library began to play Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And it felt so much like my grandmother saying hello and that everything was okay. So that is a personal symbol for me of my grandma. Other symbols are contextual, and an author builds them up by using the same object over and over with special description to help us realize that an object represents something that is bigger than the object. So contextual. For example, in 1984, we saw lots of description about the paperweight that Winston had that he bought in the shop. Eventually that paperweight shatters as he and Julia are arrested. So based on contextual information, we can see that Orwell was getting us to think about how the paperweight represented this dream of a life that he wanted to have, that was free, that was beautiful, that was protected, that was real, that connected to the past. And then some symbols have cultural meaning. So when we look at a dog, we look and think of loyalty, and that's definitely an American symbol. What's interesting about cultural symbols is that they can vary culture by culture. So in America, dogs are often associated with loyalty. In China, the same. However, in India and some parts of South Asia, dogs are actually associated with impurity or uncleanliness. So depending on your culture, symbols might take on different meanings. So symbolism is a relationship that links an object to an idea. So the song connects to my grandma. The paperweight connects to this dream of a normal and free life. The dog connects to loyalty, as long as you're in the United States. In literature, authors use symbolism for a whole bunch of different reasons. For example, an author might use a river to emphasize the ideas of theme. Think about themes that could come from looking at a river, describing a river in a novel. For example, the twists and turns of the river could symbolically represent the twists and turns of life. The smoothness of the surface might hide some deeper struggle, which might highlight a theme in which people are unaware of what they should be paying attention to. It might also symbolize our ability to keep on going through obstacles, to transcend obstacles and continue in motion. So a river could symbolize all sorts of different themes, again, depending on context. Symbols can also emphasize elements of plot. So for example, if as a character walks into a tunnel or goes from dark into light or from light into dark, think about what that might symbolize for the character. It might be going into danger, it might be coming out of danger, it might be going into knowledge, it might be coming out of knowledge, it might be starting a new adventure. So a cave or a tunnel could symbolize an element of plot. Similarly, authors often use weather to symbolize what's going on in the plot of a story. Think about what a growing storm might mean, or what rain might mean in a plot. A growing storm might symbolize violence that is coming, foreshadow something terrible that's going to happen. It might match personal conflict or turmoil. Rain is often associated with cleaning, with renewal, with hope. Definitely in California, we can understand that idea. Another powerful symbol that's associated with hope is dawn or sunrise, as we saw at the end of Cry the Beloved Country. Authors can also use symbolism to develop character. In a famous Edgar Allan Poe story called The Telltale Heart, a character kills another character, buries him under the floorboards of his house, and then feels like he has committed the perfect crime and has covered it up. However, when the police come to question him and he's being investigated for the crime, he is tormented by the sound of a pulsing, beating heart below the floorboards, and though nobody else can hear it, he can hear the telltale beating heart, which symbolizes the guilt he feels over the murder. Another way that an author can use symbolism to develop character is with character names. So for example, you have met Mercutio in Romeo and Juliet, and you might recall that his name is drawn from the Roman name for Hermes, which is Mercury, which represents his changeable, capricious personality, his jokester tendencies, and also his tendency to change from happy to sad and back again. So symbolic names are also a way that an author can use symbolism. Finally, what a character wears can be symbolic. In another Edgar Allan Poe story called The Cask of Amontillado, the main character has a grudge against another character named Fortunato, and he lures Fortunato away from a party where Fortunato is dressed in the costume of a jester or a fool. The main character lures Fortunato into his basement, telling him that he has a special cask of wine that he would like him to try, and then proceeds to chain him to the wall and build bricks in front of where Fortunato is chained, leading him there to die. Fortunato's costume as a fool symbolizes his naivete and his willingness to believe what this main character tells him. So again, what a character wears can also be symbolic. How do you spot a symbol? They're everywhere. We see them all the time, and they're throughout literature. But how do you find them? Well, there's no one way, but there's some things that you can look for. If something is repeated, it's probably important. Similarly, if an author describes something in a whole lot more detail than you might just expect, for example, Winston holding the paperweight, I think the paperweight gets a full paragraph. If something is described in a whole lot of detail, it might be a symbol. Look for position as well. Look for things that appear at key points in the plot, turning points, key moments of characterization that are associated with key events. That also could indicate some symbolism. And then always pay attention to unusual character names. If a character seems to have a weird name, like Absalom in Cry the Beloved Country, it's probably symbolic. There is one warning to keep in mind, however, as you get excited and start finding symbolism everywhere. Some symbols are personal interpretations, and we have to be careful that our interpretations match up with the evidence that the author has given us. So consider this cartoon from Peanuts, in which Lucy is talking to Charlie Brown, and Lucy says, "Hey, when you draw people, do you always have their hands behind their back to symbolize your shyness?" And Charlie Brown responds, "Well, no, I just don't know how to draw hands." So have fun, keep an eye out, go big with your symbolism, but do please make sure that it matches the evidence that you are given. Welcome to the wonderful world of symbolism.